Hi, welcome to my podcast, Reclaim. I am your host, Thaís Sky. I have supported women navigate the complexities of being human for over 10 years. This podcast is where I disseminate some of those learnings and offer thoughts and guests to guide you into your healing. Welcome. Hey humans, Thaís Sky here. Welcome to Reclaim. I first want to start off by okay, let me back up. First off, hi. Second of all, happy to be here for another episode. Today we're going to talk about the art of the apology, which you may be thinking, Thaís, how much is there to talk about in terms of apologizing? I have actually a lot of thoughts on this, and I've been writing some of them on Instagram. And I kind of want to use this space, as I have been, to further elaborate on the thoughts that I have been collecting on Instagram and give a little bit more nuance and stories and complexities, because it is much easier for me to speak this out than to write this out. Okay, so that's coming. But before I get into that, first thing, I checked out my podcast on iTunes, and I ask you all to please, if you love the podcast, to leave a review on iTunes. I am not the people that leave reviews. That's just not my jam. That's not who I am. I don't go to Yelp and leave reviews. And usually, I'll only leave a review if I'll get something back, like a discount code. So, I don't blame anybody's lack of desire to leave a review. But I am pleading with you to, not be that for a minute and to leave a review for Reclaim, because it really helps with the algorithms. And, being an entrepreneur means that I am pretty much a victim. Nobody would like me to say this. I am a victim to the algorithms. I'm sure I have power and I could use my mindset work to believe that I'm not. But at the end of the day, the algorithms decide what gets seen and what doesn't get seen. And so, leaving a review, as silly as it may be, just a few sentences can really help my podcast out. I don't do ads on my podcast for a very specific reason, because I really like for this to be a different space where we can get away from that noise. But I don't know, maybe I will have to do advertisements at some point in the future for the sustainability of the podcast. For now, it's been sustainable without it, because of listeners like you supporting the podcast through simple things like sharing it, like talking about it, like listening, liking it on Instagram, and leaving a review. So then I went to my podcast on iTunes, and I saw that someone has left a review, and I wanted to read it to you all. So her handle is Becca Curl, and Becca Curl says, I've been listening the last several months and keep finding more episodes that I'm interested in and excited about. Thaís is truly wise, vulnerable, curious, and fun in all the episodes I've been listening to. Thank you, Becca Curl. And the fact that your handle is Becca Curl tells me that you may have curly hair. And as someone who has been on the curly hair, wavy hair journey, I just want to say, love the curls. Love the owning of the curls. It's such good stuff. Okay. And then look, there's another one from October that I haven't read. It's by Let's All Get to Fire. Cool handle. And she says, or they say, he, she, they, doesn't matter. They say, Thaís is so eloquent and amazing. I feel so supported and grounded after listening to each episode. I found her through her guest appearances on the Almost 30 podcast, and I am so thankful. Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun with the girls at Almost 30 podcast, Lindsay and Krista. I've been on their podcast twice, and it's been such an honor to be in their Almost 30 community. They have quite a thriving community over there. So thank you for hopping onto the Reclaim bus. Okay, so that's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing I wanted to say is that I have a friend. Her name is Luna Love. I have featured her on my podcast, I think twice. We've had 2 interviews together here on the podcast, I'm pretty sure. She's a dear friend of mine, and she has a course called Soul and Structure. And she invited me to be a guest teacher, which is really cool, because she's asked me to talk about something that I only talk about in my mentorship, which is in what ways do we structure our coaching offerings. And so I'm here to tell you that this program may be interesting to you. It's called the Soul and Structure Entrepreneurial Academy. It's an 8-week live, interactive, regenerative business training for coaches, helping professionals, and online business owners. And she talks all about rehumanizing your business, which means making your business people first, ethical first. And how do you set up your online courses? How do you do one-on-one coaching in a way that's really authentic to you? So I am going to be a guest teacher on this amazing program. I'm such a fan. And I decided, because I'm such a fan of Luna and I can so vouch for her work, to be an affiliate for this program. I literally have not been an affiliate for any other program because there's so much junk out there that I can't stand. And so the opportunity to be an affiliate for Luna just speaks to how much I believe in her. I believe in this program. I believe in the depths of the message that she's going to give, the tools, the reflections. She's created a thriving business, and she's going to teach you how to find your own thriving business, not her thriving business. So if you are interested in learning more, go to my link in bio. There's a link there for you to click learn more. And maybe if you are a coach, a helping professional, this course may strike your fancy. Okay, so that's it in terms of that. Let's get into the material. Let's talk about apologies. Now, I'm going to talk about it from both ends, both being the person who fucked up and is apologizing and the person who is receiving that apology. There's a couple things that I kind of want to first talk about. This is unfiltered. I didn't create a workshop-y structure for this. So just like my last 2 episodes on disappointment and expectations, this may be a little all over the place. Bear with me because I know that I've got some good stuff to share with you all. Okay, apologizing. First thing is, I think it's become, for many of us, not all of us, for many of us, it has become a way of being, right? The excessive apologizing, the apologizing for every little thing, apologizing for taking up space, apologizing for talking about something passionately, apologizing for etc. And for those of us who identify as excessive apologizers, it generally comes from low self-worth, right? The worthiness wound, and from a place that we internalized that our space in the world is to be apologetic, which means that we probably learned that the space that we take up is not okay. We were probably demeaned as a child, or certainly we got the message somehow that taking up space would take out someone else's space, that there's limited amount of space, and if you took up space, it would take away from someone else. And in efforts to be accommodating and to allow the other to have all the space, it means that you cannot have any space. Excessive apologizing, I know that it comes from a really genuine place. A lot of people who are excessive apologizer are very kind people, very thoughtful people, very considerate people. Those are not bad qualities. None of this is bad. But excessive apologizing can hurt relationships, which is a little counterintuitive because we think, oh, if I'm constantly apologizing, it means I'm constantly owning, taking responsibility, and taking responsibility is good for relationships. But when it comes to excessive apologizing, it often takes away the power of your apology. So when you then apologize for something that actually is hurtful or harmful, it doesn't have as much weight because you've apologized for so many things that aren't hurtful or harmful. Does that make sense? Excessive apologizing can hurt relationships because we can be so quick to want to take away the person's pain and feel so sorry and bad that we're not actually relating. Relating, to be in a thriving relationship, we have to be able to stand on our own. We have to have the confidence to really be able to tolerate the tension of the other person not liking us. And so, we call this differentiation, to be different than, to accept that the other person is different than us. With excessive apologizing, what we're hoping is that we can be so accommodating, we can be so genuine, so sweet, so nice, so thoughtful that the other person can't possibly not like us. It's a way that we try to, gently kind of manage the other person's experience. And when we're doing that in relationship, we're not actually relating, we're controlling. And I say controlling in a very gentle, nice way, coming from someone who does this on a daily basis. This is not a judgment. It's just kind of what people pleasing is, right? And excessive apologizers tend to also be people pleasers. So excessive apologizing can often stem from all sorts of things: low self-worth, low self-esteem, and it's generally lumped together with a quality of people pleasing, which is to be the accommodator. And being an accommodator means that you can't really tolerate other people not liking you. And so what does that mean? It means that authentic relating can't happen, because you're not really being really allowing yourself and the other person to be different. So while we may have been taught that apologizing is a good thing, and many of us are taught to be the good girls, where we had to apologize if we did any type of wrong, I'm here today to talk about how actually apologizing isn't always the best thing to do. Sometimes it can actually be the wrong thing to do, and how to apologize, or how to be in the energy of apologizing or being sorry or remorseful in a way that can actually support relationships instead of take away from relationships. Okay. So that's kind of the area that we're about to traverse today, is the art of apologizing in a way that strengthens relationships instead of erodes relationships. And the first way that apologizing can erode relationships is this excessive apologizing. Now, if you Google excessive apologizing, which I just did, there are questions like, what does it mean when someone constantly apologizes? And, is over apologizing a sign of anxiety? And some people say, yes, it's a way of managing anxiety and reducing outside criticism of their perceived flaws, right? So if you are self-deprecating, if you apologize constantly, then you can manage the anxiety of being considered something problematic. So you're preventing something from happening. Another question is constantly apologizing a sign of abuse? And some people say, yes, this could be a symptom of relational trauma, where you are so scared of getting harmed, of physical repercussions, of doing something wrong, that you excessively apologize to try to manage your abuser. I mean, yeah, that makes sense, right? But I'm always careful not to associate everything with trauma. Yes, of course, this could be a symptom of capital T or lowercase t trauma. Or it could just be the ways in which we learned as a child to orient ourselves in the world. This is particularly true for women who have been taught to be good. And to be good means to apologize. I mean, I remember when I was little, I had to apologize to a little girl in a sandbar because I didn't want to share my toys. Now, I've always had difficulties sharing my shit. I don't see that as pathological, right? Like, I don't see that as like, wow, Thaís is narcissistic, or naming something bad about me because I don't like to share. I just don't like to be demanded that I have to share. And if I share, that means something about me. There are things I like to share, things I don't like to share. I don't particularly like to share my ice cream. That's just my general thing. And that stems from eating disorder days. I mean, there's a whole reason for it. However, when I was little, in the sandbox, having to apologize for not sharing my toys, that didn't make sense to me. Why should I have to apologize because I don't want to share? Instead of my parents like getting curious about why I didn't want to share, I now had to apologize to the other person. So in that small lesson, we can extrapolate that if we were told to do that constantly, then we may have learned that apologizing is the way that we relate. It's the way that we manage other people's disappointment in us. It's the way that we try to be in the world, and that we apologize not because we're remorseful, but because we need to maintain an image of goodness. So now we have to untangle that. And now we have to really sit with, what does it mean when I apologize? And like, what does it mean to apologize? Is there a genuine remorse, or does my apology mean something else? And we're going to talk about a few options, a few ways that your apologies could mean something else, and what to do with that. Now, of course, we have to go to the other extreme really quick. There is the excessive apologizers, and then there's those of us who never apologize. And obviously, that's not great either. To never apologize means that you never see how your actions, behaviors, thoughts, etc. is impacting another. Apologizing in our toxic masculinity society can often mean us believing that apologizing is a sign of weakness. The admittance of wrong means that there's something bad and broken within us. And if we have cultivated defenses where we defend against feeling bad and broken and wrong by being kind of strong, or not taking in feedback, or kind of that personality that like doesn't allow anything in, right? Like we can call like the archetype of like the bully who doesn't take feedback. We usually see that below a bully, within the bully, is actually a very hurt little child. And so not apologizing is obviously also not the goal, and certainly not what I'm promoting here. We want to apologize when we've done wrong. That's hard in and of itself. As someone who is not the first to apologize, you won't find, I can be an excessive apologizer in certain aspects, like when I'm fawning, when I'm trying to get the other person to like me, when I'm feeling vulnerable, sure. But in my interpersonal dynamics, I'm usually not the first to apologize. And I can usually be quite insistent that the other person has to apologize in order for me to be okay in a situation. And that's something I need to work on, because we don't want to be that person who never apologizes. They're not sexy. People who never apologize are usually defended against a deep fear of their own inadequacy, and their sense that if they apologize, it means that they've done wrong, which means they are wrong. And so, of course, if we believe that we are inherently bad, we don't want to apologize because we don't want to go into that realm, right? So I guess the whole point of this is we want to slowly unhook apologizing from our worth. We want to unhook the non-apologizing or de-apologizing away from our worth, and start to see apologizing as a tool, as a method of connecting, as something that we can use to engage with the other, to connect with the other, and to do better by other people, and have other people do better by us. We need to swim through the waters of believing that somehow if we apologize, it means that we are now worthy or better. Or if you don't apologize, it means that we are worthy or we are better. None of that is the case. The fact of the matter is, you are worthy and deserving and a full sovereign human no matter what. And if we were to internalize that and really take that in, the question is, okay, Thaís, so when do I use apologies? What do I want my relationship with apologies to be? And this is where I'm going to bring in some things that I have been writing on Instagram. So let me pull the first thing that I wrote up. Okay, here's what I wrote. Are you apologizing because you are genuinely sorry? Or are you apologizing because you want to maintain the image of being good? Right? We've talked about that. The next slide. Are you apologizing because you feel remorse? Or are you apologizing because you can't bear the other person's pain and you hope the apology will take it away? So what I mean by that is you apologize because you feel so bad that they feel bad. right? Like you feel terrible that they feel terrible. And so there's an enmeshment there because it can't be that they feel terrible and they're allowed to feel terrible and we can tolerate that they feel terrible. It's they feel terrible. Therefore, it means something about me that I am terrible and I can't bear my own pain. I can't bear their pain. And so the only thing I know what to do is to say, I'm sorry. And the hope with the I'm sorry is that then it takes away their pain. They're no longer upset with us or frustrated with us, or there's no more conflict and we can move on. There's obviously nothing wrong with any of this. I do this constantly. And the answer to most of these is probably somewhere in the middle. You both are doing it because you feel bad and because you can't really tolerate them being mad at you, or you can't tolerate the other person's pain. You don't want there to be a fight. You don't want there to be a misunderstanding. You want to rectify the situation as quickly as possible because you feel bad, because it sucks when we hurt somebody. And so we apologize with this thirst, this desire that if I can just apologize, everything will be okay. The conflict will no longer exist. We want to be careful with this because, again, we're using now the apology as a tool to get our own way, as a tool to alleviate our tension, our anxiety, when really we're the ones that did some harm, right? Hurt somebody in some way. We're supposed to be attuning to the other person. We're supposed to be trying to understand the other person, not getting defensive against our own pain. So this is where it gets tricky because it's really hard to do that. And so then obviously what we immediately want to do is go into the apologizing. The apologizing, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is a form of fixing it. We use the apology to fix the problem. But a lot of conflict isn't fixable. And this is where it can get really, really, really sticky and tricky with interpersonal dynamics, is that oftentimes there is no answer to conflict. Most conflict aren't solvable. Not all conflict, of course not. There are plenty of conflicts that are solvable and that can be fixed and measured and right action can ensue. But most of the time, conflict is more sticky than that. The conflict arises simply because it's two different people having two different needs. And so using an apology to fix that doesn't actually fix the problem. It's a way of band-aiding the problem. It helps alleviate some anxiety, but it doesn't really it doesn't attend to what's happening underneath. And so apologizing to try to take away someone's experience is attempting to fix their experience. It's the same as giving advice. Oftentimes, when a friend comes to us and they don't ask our consent to give them advice, when we feel inclined to give them advice, it usually is because we want to fix their pain, not listen to their pain, because their pain evokes something intolerable within us. So we want to be really thoughtful of that. Okay? And then my final slide is apologizing as a way of controlling other people's perception or experience of us can often get in the way of genuine relating, which I talked about a little bit earlier. Now, the caption reads, apologizing is important when it comes to taking accountability, learning from our mistakes, and making amends. I hope that that's a no-brainer, right? Like, I hope you're listening to this and you kind of already got that. I'm on team apologizing. Let's be clear. But we have to be mindful of why we are apologizing, because if it's coming from a place of trying to control other people's perception of us or other people's experience of us, we may be interfering with genuine relating. And so I remember moments in childhood where I had to apologize to other kids for things I did wrong, quote unquote, that didn't make sense to me. It's made me think about how often we are taught to be good at the expense of being honest, and how often now as adults we apologize for things we aren't really sorry for in order to maintain this idea that we are good and thoughtful and nice, or also to preserve the peace. If we have become very sensitive to conflict, to tension, usually because we didn't learn how to navigate conflict and tension in the way that people still stayed, right? Conflict and tension led to people shutting us out or to abandonment or rejection of some kind. If we don't know how to tolerate conflict, when someone comes to us and tells us that they're mad at us, we may want to resolve that conflict as fast as possible. understandable. That conflict, if they're telling us that they're mad at us, maybe they're also saying, and I'm going to leave you. And so apologizing is maybe a way to, we can be like, please don't leave me. I promise I'm different. I'm changed. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, so, and then what I've said before is what you may find is that when you ask yourself these questions, that the answer will come as a both, and that's okay. And it may also shed light on where there may be people-pleasing, fawning, or perfectionistic tendencies needing attention. Because ideally, what we want to do, like I said before, is to use apologies as a tool for connection, for accountability, to make amends, not a tool to manipulate, control, or take away the other person's experience of us. Yeah. Okay. And so in that vein, it's important for us to be thoughtful that when we apologize, or when someone apologizes to us, let's say I'm really mad at somebody because they were late and they apologize. I'm still allowed to have feelings that they were late. Like, I'm still allowed to feel angry. Like, just because someone apologizes doesn't mean now my feelings are gone. Oh, you're sorry. I can't be mad at you anymore. That's a false narrative. You can have the apology, have it be sincere, have it be the perfect apology, and still have feelings about it because you still feel hurt. If you don't use an apology as a Band-Aid, that means that you can apologize and there still may need to be some tending. And that's, I think, the right approach to apologizing. To apologize as a way of taking accountability, but also then be in the conversation with the person about their feelings, and to have a dialogue and to understand and to get curious about. Now that is true apologizing, because we're not using an apology to basically shut them up. You know, like sometimes people apologize as a way to ease your pain, which can be helpful, but sometimes they apologize and yet you still have feelings about the thing. And so notice, right? Like where your relationships to apologies are a period instead of a comma. AKA where it's a way to close the conversation instead of opening it into an exploration of harm, accountability, responsibility, empathy, and connection. And if you apologize and you're surprised if the other person is still upset, it may be that you apologize to take away the person's feelings rather than because you truly felt remorse, or more likely a combination of both of those things. So let's say you apologize because you genuinely feel bad that something happened, harm happened. You apologize. The other person still has feelings about it. The best thing you can do is, I'm really sorry. It's really, I can hear how much my actions hurt you. I feel, I can understand where you're coming from. I am really sorry that I hurt you, and I want to hear more. Like, tell me more. Let's talk about this. Let's make right. Let's make amends. Let's understand this both together so that we can know how to move forward together in this, rather than I'm sorry. And then what do you mean you still have feelings about this? What do you mean? Yeah. Okay. So maybe, hopefully at this point, you're questioning your use of apologizing. First, use apology when you feel like you've done something wrong. If you don't feel like you've done something wrong, or if you don't feel ready yet to take accountability, or you don't feel ready yet to acknowledge harm because you don't think that there's been harm, or you want to understand more, don't apologize. Ask more clarifying questions. Now, I know that this may get some pushback, but here's what I mean by this. I don't mean don't apologize, or that you have to understand in order to apologize. There will be things that I would do to my partner that I will never understand why it hurts him. like, it's just beyond my comprehension. Like, I'll say something, he'll be like, wow, that really hurt my feelings. And I'm like, really? Like, that hurt your feelings? Like, that was not something that would hurt my feelings. Like, I don't understand why it would hurt your feelings. And so before I go to quick to, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings, from a place of defense or from a place of wanting him to just like me again and to get over this, I could instead be like, okay, I hear that I've hurt your feelings. Can I hear more? I want to understand more. Can you explain to me how it felt, or whatever, your interpretation of what happened? And then I can be like, you know what, listening to this more, yeah, I clearly hurt you and I'm so sorry. Right? So I'm not saying withhold your apologies or don't apologize. I'm just saying that, like, if you're apologizing and you're not meaning it, then what's that saying about your integrity and your honesty? Mean it. If you're going to apologize, mean it. If you don't mean it, don't apologize. Get clarifying information, understand more, get to the point where you can mean it. But inauthentic apologies doesn't feel good, and it doesn't often result in connecting. So again, I feel like I'm going to get a little pushback on that, probably because I'm not fully articulating this right. And I'm sure that there's so many examples that you can come at me where I'm like, yeah, you're right. Maybe you don't. But I don't know. In this moment, as I'm talking to you all in my bedroom with the mic on my belly, thinking about apologizing, I'm going to stick to it. Like, don't apologize unless you mean it. Get to the place where you can mean it. Because, if somebody tells you that you've hurt their feelings, it's important to listen to that, because we want to be in genuine relating to people. And we have to think about, okay, they said that they feel hurt by something I did. Is it something that I can really apologize for? If somebody comes onto my Instagram and they disagree with something that I said, do I owe them an explanation? I don't know. I don't know what my relationship is to that. But that's different, right? Than if my partner comes to me and says that, he's upset with me. I care about that relationship, and I care about making sure that we are good, that we're strong, that we're understanding each other. And so in a heat of the moment, it can be hard to access the true remorse or the true reflection of hurt. You don't actually have to have felt like you did something wrong in order to apologize, but you do, I think, have to get to the place where you want to apologize and that apology feels right and real. Again, don't apologize just because you want the other person to not feel that way anymore. Apologize because you mean it. And if you don't mean it, get to the point where you can mean it. So I'm going to stick by that, and we'll see how I feel if I get any pushback. Okay. The other thing about apologies, right, is like, if you have to know when to apologize. You have to know why you are apologizing. So think about the things that you apologize for that probably doesn't need an apology. And for example, you got to an email late. Do you really have to start with, I'm so sorry? Like, maybe you can start with, thank you for waiting patiently while I got back to your email, right? Like, do you have to go quick to the apologizing, or is there actually a different way that you can name it, where you can express gratitude to the other person for waiting or for understanding? It's just so pervasive how often we go into apologizing, and it doesn't feel very good to be the recipient of that either. It doesn't feel authentic. Yeah. Just if you're saying no, if you're playing with establishing boundaries for the first time and you're learning to say no, you don't have to apologize when you say no. You can be like, thank you for inviting me. Unfortunately, I can't participate in that at the moment. And that's it. You don't have to say, I'm so sorry. You don't have to be apologetic about it, et cetera, et cetera. And in the authentic relating, oftentimes when we apologize too quickly, we stop the curiosity. So again, we want to be developing a relationship with apologizing that feels really honest and authentic. We want our apologies to mean something. And that's what I'm inviting for us today. How can we use our apologies in a way that's very intentional, in a way that makes people realize that we are genuinely sorry for something we have done, rather than a way that we try to be accommodating and nice and have everyone like us. Now, That being said, usually just saying I'm sorry doesn't really do it when it comes to making amends. I mean, you're going to have to go a little bit further than just I'm sorry. You're going to have to express genuine remorse. You're going to have to really be in relationship with that person to explore exactly how you can make amends. Sometimes there isn't more that you can do because the conflict just has come in from the two of you not understanding each other, or the conflict has come as a result of minor transgressions, and it doesn't necessarily require anything more. But sometimes big boo-boos happen. Big boo-boos happen. And at which point the apology needs to include some thoughts around, some discussion around how to do better moving forward. Now, I received a comment on one of my Instagram posts that I shared with you, and the comment said, "The only apologies I accept are changed behavior." And, I get that. I get that, because if you're in a relationship where someone continues to do the same thing over and over and over again, and then you have this conversation and then they continue to do it, like, that doesn't feel very good. That apology isn't genuine. However, I'm always weary of how much we put on other people to appease us. Relationships are just so much more complicated than that. And oftentimes, because conflict isn't easy to unpack, right? It's not so easy to say you did this thing wrong. Usually conflict requires two people. There's two sides. There's two misunderstandings. This idea of the only apologies I'll accept is changed behavior can feel really grand, considering that most of the times we don't really need changed behavior. What we need is to be understood and to be heard. And this is where things can get complicated in relationships, because, change is hard. And most things that occur within a relationship, change isn't going to happen right away. Oh, I just got an email. Change isn't going to happen right away. It takes time and commitment to change. And so we need to be discerning and thoughtful about that phrase and where we apply that phrase. And what I think always weary of these kind of like Instagrammable black and white kind of like radical, bold declarations, because usually people that are really in their righteous are very much in pain and isolate themselves. And it's, righteousness is often unaddressed pain and unaddressed anger. And we don't want to be righteous in relationships, because then we're not going to get to be in any relationships. Okay. So finally, I guess we need to talk about how to then actually apologize. Are you apologizing, or are you justifying bad behavior? Are you apologizing, or are you saying, I'm sorry you're upset, right? Like, I'm sorry you're feeling this way. Is that really apology, or are you trying to, kind of manage the other person? We, I guess, need to be thoughtful about the elements of like what makes an apology that is genuine. If I'm inviting you to take away so much fluffy apologies, that means when you actually apologize, it needs to be really thoughtful and mindful and kind of proper, right? Like to do right. So of course, to say you're sorry. Not I'm sorry, but I'm sorry you feel that way. Just I'm sorry. And, obviously you have to mean it. And then you have to take responsibility for your actions, right? Own the mistake. Own what it is that you did. It may be helpful for you to explain what it is that happened. Like what it is, how you're understanding what happened. Like, I am so sorry. I hear how much I've hurt you. When I was late the other day, you felt really disrespected. And I don't want to disrespect you. So let's come up with a plan to make sure that I can leave work earlier on Thursdays so I'm home on time, right? Have a plan. Like, think about, like, what do you want to do moving forward? And then being vulnerable. I mean, part of an apology requires vulnerability. It requires you saying, yeah, I fucked up. And like, I hope that you can forgive me, and I hope that we can move forward from this. And I want to continue to understand what happened here so that we can repair, Ruptures are an inevitable and healthy part of any relationship. But in order for rupture to have meaning, we have to be in willingness to repair, to make amends, to say, I fucked up. This is what, I did that hurt, and this is what I'm going to do to not hurt you again. Or sometimes, because most conflict doesn't have a solution, the best that we can do is, I'm sorry, I fucked up, and like, I want to keep talking about it, and I just want to keep hearing you, and I just want to keep being in this with you. And that can be a really wonderful plan. That can be a really wonderful way of saying, we're two people that aren't really going to change each other, but we can certainly change each other's behaviors, and we can certainly understand each other. Does that make sense? Okay, let me see. I'm going to Google. Let's see. How to apologize. Let's see what I missed here. Understand reasons to apologize. Okay. We did that. Know when to apologize. See, look, I am so unoriginal. Everyone else has talked about this. Take responsibility. Yay. Take responsibility. And that means like changing it from, I'm sorry if you were offended by something I said, which isn't very much of an apology. Oh my gosh. The best apologies is, like, I'm sorry what is it? I'm sorry, I'm doing the best that I can. Ooh, nothing like that apology to really feel like that person's being apologetic, right? Instead, you can say, when I said the harmful thing, I wasn't thinking. I realized I hurt your feelings, and I'm sorry. Boom, so different. I'm sorry if you were offended. They clearly were offended, which is why they're telling you. Yeah? Okay. Express regrets, make amends, reaffirm boundaries. Own up to your part, not theirs. Oh, that's a good one. You can only apologize for what's your part, right? Don't apologize for what's not your part. And most of the times in conflict, there are two people parts. And so there's the your part and there's the their part. And most thriving relationships, both people are able to be in that. They're able to take their part. It's important not to take it on that the entire conflict is your fault. It's just so much more complicated than that. There's two people. So conflict inherently means that there's two individuals. We need to take part of our part, not the whole part. Okay? And then let go of results to an extent. And that's, I think, what I said, right? Is that you can apologize, but they may not forgive you, or they may still have feelings that needs to be talked through. And that's okay. That's all right. That's just a part of the whole shebang. Whew, okay, I'm feeling quite complete here, but I do want to make one final comment. Watch out, okay, for where you're waiting for someone to apologize in order to heal. Yeah? It can be surprising the ways we consciously and unconsciously wait for someone to apologize, validate, or atone in order for us to move on. Other people's behavior is not your responsibility, but your healing is. Your parents may never apologize for how they hurt you. Your roommate may never apologize for not cleaning their part of the living room. Your friend may never apologize for betraying your trust. While you may certainly ask for it, if it doesn't come, it doesn't mean anything about the validity of your pain. But it does mean a lot about what type of relationship you may have with that person moving forward. Don't let your growth be dependent on other people's limitations. If the other person can't apologize or doesn't apologize, it doesn't mean that the relationship is over, but it is information and something for you to tuck in. Is there an equal distribution of apologizing and taking responsibility in your relationship? Or is there one person who always apologizes? Because that's probably a sign that there's an unequal power dynamic going. There's a dynamic going when one is the apologizer, and probably is taking on way more than their share of the apologizing. In thriving relationships, there is a congruent kind of symbiotic, I'm like waving my head from side to side here, like give and take, where both partners are able to take their part, apologize for their part, but there isn't one person who is doing the predominant apologizing. There's always two people in relationships. Of course, though, not speaking to abusive relationships, that is different. This whole thing has not been about significant abusive relationships. We're talking about the more benign, complicated interpersonal dynamics that most of us are in. I hope this has been helpful. Please let me know how it lands for you. I'm always so in love with hearing from all of you. It means so much to me when I hear from you. I'm looking forward to chatting with you next week. I have a wonderful interview coming to you next week, so stay tuned for that, and I'll talk to you soon.